I fucking love Monster Munch. They're so good. Hi folks. Today marks 5 years since Scotland received the results on whether or not we'd become an independent country. Guess what? We shat the bed. But I'm feeling far more optimistic than I was back then. Crying into my pillow alone in China wasn't fun. 5 years have passed, although I feel like I've aged about 30. A lot of stuff has happened since then, but don't worry, this video won't be a massive in-depth analysis of every newspaper article that's been produced since then. It'll be more of a general overview, where I make a groundbreaking comparison, with hopefully some food for thought left at the end. Before I'd left for China, I'd been a volunteer at the Commonwealth Games. The atmosphere in Glasgow and across Scotland in general at the time was electric. The whole year had been class up until then, and then after referendum result day, it was a bit shit. It was a weird sort of hollowness, and I probably would have sold my left ball to change the result. Now, this isn't something that hasn't been said before, but I'd argue that the Yes movement played an absolute blinder for the majority of the campaign, but slipped up in two key areas: currency and EU membership. On currency, we didn't really get currency right, and the reason for this is because we were over-reliant on our opponents agreeing to a currency union, where we would share the pound sterling. And even if a currency union would have been agreed to post the Yes vote, it just gave the Better Together campaign the ability to just claim that it would never happen, and that snookered us a bit. Now, this is why I support an independent Scottish currency, because to me it makes the most logical sense. And no, we won't be forced to use the euro either. The European Union can't force any country to meet the requirements of the European exchange rate mechanism. And on the subject of the EU in general, the idea and practicalities of Scottish membership of the EU during the independence referendum was far too vague. Even though no EU member state had said they'd block us from entering, it was an easy thing for the Better Together campaign to argue, although it's hard to imagine any future Better Together campaign would be telling us that we won't be in the EU, because that would be dumb. So it's pretty fair to say now that times have changed, and all the sickly sweet "we love you Scotland" stuff evaporated on the 19th of September. The winners, and I'm using some serious air quotes there, rioted in the centre of Glasgow, ripping saltires out the hands of young women, and they even chased a gay councillor down, calling him homophobic slurs, as you can see in this video.
No surrender! We had a go! Scum! Scum! Nationalist scum! You're away from a flag! Nationalist scum! You're away from a nationalist scum! Fucking country! Why don't you fuck off? Why don't you just fuck off? That flag, you're nationalist! You fuck off! Oh no! You've been following me all day! Because Scotland said no! You're fucking poofed up! Fuck off!
I could go into how civic and ethnic nationalism are two different things, but I won't do that in this video, and if you want a video on that, then scream about it in the comment section, and I might do it. Anyway, David Cameron got into some form of altercation with a pig or something like that, and then decided to have a referendum on EU membership to sort out Tory infighting. And then there was like a whole thing, just this wee thing that didn't impact the entire constitutional fabric of the UK. I always sort of viewed the Brexit referendum as like indyref's wee insignificant younger brother or something like that. And funnily enough, I was in China during this referendum as well, which you might be noticing a kind of disturbing trend here. Don't worry, I'll warn you all before I visit next. I was actually working for the British Embassy at the time, and I just remember sitting at my desk thinking to myself that Scotland has another choice here. We didn't need to go through with this if we didn't want to. That and the fucking map definitely showed some political differences. However, afterwards it became very obvious that the Brexit referendum was pretty much a playground for the Cambridge Analyticas of this world. And this next bit was partly inspired by HBomberguy, who made a really good video on the subject of woke brands and how marketing dominates our lives, I'll link the full video in the description below, but there's one part of the video I'll briefly summarise just now. He talks about the coffee machine company Keurig, and how when they removed their advertising from Sean Hannity's show for defending Roy Moore, a lot of American conservatives took to social media to boycott Keurig. People literally smashed their own coffee machines in anger at a company after already paying for the coffee machines, and by doing it so publicly they gave Keurig a load of free advertising. Keurig hadn't planned for this, but it gave them a lot of attention, and the market and eyes of the world were all fixed on them. And it wasn't long before Nike played off of Keurig's sudden marketing boost and unveiled their Colin Kaepernick video, which pissed off, you guessed it, American conservatives. And then Gillette followed suit after seeing the tried and tested method of winding up conservatives by doing their own advert challenging toxic masculinity. But why does any of this matter? Because I think the eyes of the political world watched Scotland very closely during the independence referendum. I'm not going to be saying anything super groundbreaking here, but social media was a powerful tool that was used by both sides. I know, shock horror. But I'd actually argue it was the first time Scotland had ever seen social media political campaigning on such large a scale. And I think that the reason Yes voters in particular were so galvanised online was because it was a place where the hostile media didn't have that much influence. It was a level playing field. Despite my own bias on scaremongering from Better Together, which I literally almost forgot was branded Project Fear by their own Director of Communications, I'm not saying that Scotland ever faced the full brunt of like a Cambridge Analytica presidential election style assault. However, I do think that the power of social media in political campaigning was closely analysed and looked at during the independence referendum. And for the record, I don't think the Yes campaign was similar in any way to the rhetoric of the Leave and Trump campaign, but the fact that the Yes campaign leapt from 25% yes at the start of the campaign to 45% yes by the end result, it definitely got an awful lot of people thinking. And the Yes campaign faced a hostile state broadcaster in the BBC and a right-wing press, and yet still managed to increase their result. Now, if you're a political analyst looking at this developing in Scotland, you'd be thinking, what if we could do something like, I don't know, scream fake news until people believe all news is fake, and then completely swamp their social media with tailored information specifically chosen to be shown to them based on their private personal data, and oh wait, fuck. So, what am I saying here? I reckon that indyref was the Keurig to the Nike and Gillette of the Brexit referendum and the US presidential election. And if that wasn't the most long-winded comparison ever, I don't know what is. I'd actually argue that Scotland was largely unaffected by the Brexit referendum and the Leave campaign, and by that I don't mean that Scotland doesn't have any Leave voters, but rather these people were already leaning towards Leave anyway. The Brexit referendum never got near the levels of excitement or engagement that had existed in 2014, and while I'd shown you some of the horrible stuff that happened just after the vote, it was, by and large, pretty good-natured. Brexit referendum in comparison was all a bit boring, to be honest. I mean, the Remain campaign was shit. It was a half-hearted effort from David Cameron, and by that point, nobody really wanted to support a campaign run by him anyway. Although, on the other side, you had Nigel Farage front and centre, which was unattractive, to say the least. I've noticed there's been a slight rewrite of history since the Leave campaign illegally won the referendum. Yeah, you remember the whole law-breaking stuff that nothing ever really got done about? Anyway, apparently the Leave vote was all about how people were galvanised to strike back against the tyranny of the EU, such as not allowing straight bananas or some shit. And here we have a convenient lie for people to tell themselves to sweep a very xenophobic and racist campaign under the rug. Now, we're over 3 years from that Brexit vote, and it's been a disaster for the entire time. David Cameron pissed off almost immediately, and we were landed with Theresa May, who was absolutely hopeless in every conceivable way during both her time as Home Secretary and then as Prime Minister. And now we've got Boris Johnson unlawfully proroguing Parliament as we head towards a no deal. That's a no deal. A no deal that threatens jobs, food and medicine shortages. People will die because of that. And yet, the British government just doesn't care. As an aside, I can't wait for the eventual attempt at a citizen's arrest or some shite when Boris Johnson next visits Scotland. It'll be totally expected, but 100% worth it for the sheer awkwardness of it and the memes. I'll finally get more than 5 likes on the Scottish Politics shitposting Facebook page. My only dream in life. Anyway, in Scotland, we've got a choice. Do we really want to tie ourselves to a ship that's absolutely destined to sink? The UK isn't a force for good in the world. And while Scotland definitely needs to own its role in colonialism and imperialism, we need to move forward as a country. And we can't do that while we're attached to an isolationist United Kingdom, which has become a global laughingstock. People are beginning to naturally just shift to yes. I've always said that people moving to support independence is a bit of a one-way street. And if you want to see people who've made that journey since 2014, I'd really recommend Phantom Power Films, who's an ongoing series with people from all walks of life changing their minds and supporting independence. I'll link his channel in the description below. I feel like this has been said so many times that you'll all collectively roll your eyes into the back of your skulls, but I think it's important that we recognise and admit that an independent Scotland won't be perfect. Anyone who believes it will be needs to quickly convince themselves otherwise, because you're literally playing into the caricature that unionists love to come up against. We'll have lots of work that we need to be cracking on with if we want to make Scotland a successful independent country. But the nice thing is, we'll finally have the sole responsibility for doing so. So, here's to 5 years since a frustrating, upsetting and difficult defeat in 2014. We're 5 years on, but things haven't improved for Scotland inside the UK. It's time to get off the sinking ship and grab a life jacket. Cheers for watching everyone, hope you enjoyed the video. I'd like to thank these lovely people on the screen just now for supporting me on Patreon. If I pronounce your name wrong, I'm really sorry, and please slag me to death in the comments section or message me on Patreon to kick my arse so I can sort it next time. So special thanks to Anonymous, Lego 2x4, Dylan Aitken, Catriona MacDonald, and Fitz Amisov. Thank you very much everyone, and I'll see you next time.